It'd be like if people opened up a...
No, the Fed doesn't counterfeit, do they?
I think that's something police ought to investigate.
Yeah, really.
I mean, just down the road. Doesn't this kind of look weird? It's a federal building, but it's not federal.
I mentioned that to them. They said that there was
sir, I'm sorry. What did you say?
Not a federal building.
It's not a federal building.
It's a
10 years ago, cops would laugh at me about that. I'm excited you know.
However, you're welcome to call our public affairs or call our head office in Dallas and speak with them.
No, sir, you've been super nice. You're right. Some people thought it was like a park because it looked like a post office. You're right. This is private property. We better get off. We better go. Hey, guys, well, they do get our tax money, and they do control everything. They enslave us! I mean, sure, they are the slave masters, but see, that you heard the police officer. He's right. This is private property, so we want our private property. Now, it's private property of a mafia, of a criminal cartel, but nevertheless, it's their private property for now, and until they're indicted and in prison, we won't, and until, you know, we finally get the audit, and the Congress raids all the material, we're gonna respect their private property until then. So let's get off the private property of the Federal Reserve right now. Come on, everybody. Come on, let's go. Let's get off the private property.
I got that whole conversation if you want to email it.
Police officers out here tonight, this beautiful weather, here protecting our First Amendment. And I wonder how many of these police officers can read on the sign, Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas, Federal, but right here says private property. Does that sound like fraud to you? Private property, Federal Reserve? Can't you investigate it? There's the criminals right there. Yeah! We didn't have these people. So the cops do. We didn't have these people. Officers, I have a question for you. You're here guarding the private offshore Rothschild Bank, the Federal Reserve, from evil Americans. Evil Americans. I know you get the Homeland Security reports saying those that don't like the Federal Reserve are evil. I've read the Homeland Security reports where they tell cops the Federal Reserve is federal and that we're raving lunatics. Really, their charter is private. Right there. Private property, no trespassing. Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas. It doesn't say federal zone, federal property, stay off slaves. It says private property, no trespassing, Federal Reserve Bank of Dallas.
Obama is notoriously a liar.
We need to go to where the real architecture of government is, and it's not in a president.
Wall Street has hijacked Washington in broad daylight.
Well, Obama's already fudging. He's fudged since day one in this election.
The elite are using Obama to pacify the public so they can usher in the North American Union by stealth, launch a new Cold War, and continue the occupation of Iraq and Afghanistan.
The globalists are outside all the nations. That gives them safety, and they play countries off against each other.
We've got to give them a stake in creating the kind of world order that I think all of us would like to see.
Partnership and cooperation among nations is not a choice. It is the only way.
What they're doing is using the existence of the United States to act out their Wall Street fantasies of world domination and maintaining their capital structures and maintaining their system of looting.
The fight that this country has been waging since its inception is for the central bankers not to take over the country.
President Barack Obama is only the tool of a larger agenda.
Senator Obama had a desire to do some meetings. Others have a desire to meet with him tonight in a private way, and that's what we're doing.
Presidential candidate Barack Obama was publicly criticizing the North American Free Trade Agreement in a bid for votes, but privately telling Canadian officials not to worry about it.
If you talk to our generals, they are desperate for is a civilian counterpart to our military force.
What do you call this thing where you get this false sense of gratification, but because a black man is in office, everything's gonna be all right? No, everything's not gonna be all right.
So I know how unpopular it is to be seen as helping banks right now, especially when everyone is suffering in part from their bad decisions. I promise you, I get it.
The Obama deception. The truth strikes back. Get your copy of The Obama Deception today at Infowars.com or download it in super high quality at PrisonPlanet.tv. And we are back. It is InfoWars Nightly News, this special Columbus Day transmission. I hope all of you are having a good and safe holiday with your family. We did not take off today because the news never sleeps. Now, this next story is incredible. We'll put up on screen the Chicago Tribune. It's also in other papers across the country. And the Chicago Tribune is reporting lawyer may testify for defense in terror case. And that's actually the Associated Press posted at the Chicago Tribune. A Michigan attorney who claims the government had a role in the attempted bombing of the Detroit-bound plane could be called as a witness for the defense. And it goes on to say that the underwear bomber, Umar Farouk Abdul Muttalib, may call Kurt Haskell, who was a passenger on the Northwest Airlines Flight 253 from Amsterdam to Detroit on Christmas Day 2009. Haskell's name was disclosed in court Thursday by Attorney Chambers, an attorney who is assisting the reported underwear bomber. Now, let's be clear here, ladies and gentlemen. Kurt Haskell, a month and a half before, in congressional sworn testimony, the Undersecretary of State Kennedy, a month and a half before, Kennedy confirmed what Kurt Haskell said he witnessed in the Amsterdam airport. A month and a half before, right off the plane, Kurt Haskell said he saw the sharp-dressed man get him on the plane, argue with the people at the final boarding area, and get him on without the passport. Later, we learned that the State Department was pressured by a, quote, unnamed agency. This is on record. C-SPAN, Detroit Free Press, you name it, to put him on the plane and to get him that visa. So this is basically what we're dealing with here. So Kurt Haskell is not somebody who is claiming there's a government role. From day one, he said shenanigans are going on. It should be investigated. And now here to break down the incredible development, like out of a Hollywood movie. In fact, they wouldn't put it in a movie. It's too incredible that the reported underwear bomber, the guy who says he did it, would now say that he's going to call Kurt Haskell. We'll get into the jury selection, so much more with Kurt Haskell today. Kurt, thank you for joining us.
Sure. Glad to be back.
Now, that was a basic breakdown. In the 10 minutes we've now got with you, I would like you to just go over what it was like to hear that he's calling you as a witness. And I know you've been going to the jury selection and other parts of the trial, and you've also, on your blog, talked about the Associated Press quoting you out of context. So let's cover it all.
All right. Yeah. I had a trial of my own I was doing Thursday morning, and then when that finished, it was supposed to finish around 1. I was going to head over to federal court, which was about 3 or 4 blocks away from where I was at, to watch the final jury selection. And this was on Thursday last week, so just a few days ago. And just as my trial was ending around 1 o'clock, I got a text from my brother that said, I hear you're testifying at the underwear bomber trial. And this was news to me, so I gave him a call as soon as I got out of my trial. And he said he heard on the radio. Now, mind you, he's in Florida. He lives in Florida. He's not local here at all, so this was national radio. And he said he heard on the radio that standby Attorney Chambers had indicated in court today that I'd be testifying. So, as I said, this was big news to me. So I headed over to the federal courthouse to try and talk to Anthony Chambers. And I actually ran into him outside the courthouse. And I said, hey, what's going on? I hear something was said about me this morning in court. I wasn't there. And he said, yeah, Umar said this morning that he wants Attorney Haskell to be his only witness in the case. So it's pretty shocking to me, actually. You know, I didn't think that Umar, if he was representing himself, would call me as a witness. Now, I knew that Anthony Chambers would if he was ever appointed official attorney. He's only standby right now. So the fact that Umar himself called me, it's really shocking to me. I'm just very, very, very surprised at it. And it's so ironic. I mean, truth is almost stranger than fiction here. We have the underwear bomber representing himself, having me, the only witness, testify in this case. Remember, he's being charged with attempting to murder me and 289 other people. But how ironic is it that now I'm on the stand to testify on his behalf to save him from a life sentence in prison? You couldn't make something like this up, even. It's extremely bizarre. That being said, the 2 days before this, I was in court watching the prospective jurors get questioned. And how this works, the judge asked each juror some questions, and then the prosecutor asked some questions, and then the defense attorney. And, you know, I kept seeing the same questions come up from the judge and from standby attorney Chambers for the defense. And there were basically two questions, slightly varied, but the first one was, do you think after you hear all the evidence, you'll be able to determine whether the defendant actually possessed a bomb or an explosive device? And the second question that was repeated often was, do you realize that the media doesn't always tell the truth? So I thought those two questions were pretty telling to me. You know, and as I'm sitting there with all these members of the press thinking they're going to report these in their articles, I even talked to two reporters, one from Readers and one from CNN, saying, you know, are you guys catching on to what's going on here, that what I've been telling you for 2 years now is actually true? And both of them kind of shook their heads agreeing with me. But do we have those statements or those questions or any significance in any media story from that day? Not at all. The only place that even appeared was in a continuing blog the Free Press had that day on freep.com. And it was just a little blurb. They had someone at the courthouse giving continual updates. And what it said was, the media is really taking a beating here today, or something like that. The only place this was even scratched upon at all. Because obviously, you know, if the media reports that these questions keep coming up, the next question is, why? And the answer is very obvious. It's what I've been saying all along. Umar was placed on this plane intentionally by an undercover U.S. intelligence agent with a defective bomb. That's the real story. It's the story the press is trying very hard to cover up, and it doesn't want it to get out. It's too explosive. Now, that being said, Umar had a couple of outbursts at the hearing on October 4th, saying that the U.S. is a cancer, and I forget exactly. It's on my blog if you want to see the exact words.
He was saying that Zarqawi wasn't dead and the rest of it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Anwar al-Awlaki isn't dead, he's alive, something like that. And an AP reporter asked me about that after the hearing. What he says, what do you make out of these outbursts? And I said, well, you know, I saw Umar before we boarded. He didn't make a peep. I saw him when he lit his fake bomb on the plane, and his crotch was burning, and he didn't make a sound. And I've seen him here several times in court, and he's always quiet and, you know, doesn't say much, and this is totally out of character. So what the AP reported was, Haskell says this is out of character for Umar. You know, when he lit his bomb, he didn't make a peep. Well, I read that article, and it left out two important things that I thought. One, that I saw him before we boarded, and two, that I said he lit a fake bomb. So you can see how the media was twisting my statements back on Tuesday.
Yeah, it's turning them into false statements. But you told me today on the radio, the AP reporter wasn't done there. I mean, he wants to continue to misrepresent what you're saying.
Right. And after this bombshell on Thursday, where Umar indicated in court that he's calling